These are the goals for week 2. Now that you have an idea for an app, it's time to start coding and building it. So what you should be focusing on now is continue learning. You're going to continue learning the language, you're going to continue learning Git, and you're going to continue learning the framework to build your app. In the link section, I'm going to provide tutorials for Express and Flask. My recommendation is to watch those tutorials first and then go through the step-by-step walkthrough that I did for Express and Flask in the demo app Express and demo app Flask repo that I have on the Coding for Product GitHub. And the rest of the items on the list are listed as if needed, and that means that I want you to, your team should decide on which path to take. You don't have to, you're not supposed to implement them all this week, just your team needs to decide on whether or not to do them. The next one is pick a CSS framework. If you attended Mallory's lecture, she introduced Bootstrap and Foundation. So you can decide you want to use a framework or you want to do the CSS from scratch by yourself. I think one of the main advantage of the CSS frameworks is that if you're not very good at CSS, or by using a framework you'll still have a decent looking site, and all you have to do is add some class names to your HTML. Number 2, pick a database. Look at your app and decide if you need a database. If you need to save custom data, then you're going to need a database. If all you're doing is grabbing information from another source, then you don't need a database. Then probably don't need a database. I will recommend Postgres SQL, mainly because learning how to use a relational database is a good skill to have. And Postgres also supports JSON types, which means you can store JSON in your database. And that's kind of, if you want to do schemaless, you can use the JSON field to do that. Then you need to pick, if you are using a relational database, do you want to use plain SQL or do you want to use an ORM? Advantage of doing plain SQL, I think, is that it's a good skill to have just to practice learning plain SQL. A disadvantage is if you have related tables, then you have to do a little bit more coding to get the related items. If you pick an ORM, the advantage is you don't have to learn SQL, and it makes it really easy to get the related data. The disadvantage of an ORM is you have to learn how to use the ORM. You have to learn how to create models and set them up correctly, and how to query them using the language of the ORM. And another thing you can do is that if you're not, you need to grab the data from somewhere, either a database or an API, but you're not ready to connect to a database or an API, then you can hard code the data for each route. Such as in the example app, I had hard-coded data for the users and the teams, and I just did that as an array of objects. And if you hook your app up to a database, you can use CData, which pre-populates the database with some records. And if you have time, you can also user test app, where you show your current app, either the wireframes or the actual thing you built, to users and see what they think about it. And you should also start, you need some way of keeping track of who's doing what, so I suggest using a project management tool like GitHub Issues and GitHub Projects, or something else like Trello. And if you're looking for ideas of what you can code during your first week, my suggestion would be set up a framework and have it all running on your machine, and add routes and a simple template for each of the page of your site. Like for on step 3 where I had a route and I defined templates. And if that page needs some data, you can pass some hard-coded data to that page, to the template like I did in step 4. Once you have the basic routes and basic templates set up for your app, then you can do other things such as installing a CSS framework like Bootstrap or Foundation. And then, and for those of you who want to do more, you can start connecting your app to a database as in step 19, and you can create migrations for your to create the tables, and then you can create seed data so you can pre-populate your database. And you can also decide on which method you want to connect to the database. You can use just raw SQL, or you can use an ORM. So I'm excited to see you guys on Sunday and see what you guys can build in your first week. Thank you.